We love some sword and shield genre around here, like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Gladiator, Braveheart, Kingdom of Heaven, 300, Vikings, you get the point. But now, the god of the epic has released his latest with Napoleon, so we decided to try out this much used God's Eye view shot of a battlefield. And you don't have to film anything to make it.
So good. It's so good.
But before we get into the thick of it, I did want to talk about something that is very important to us, and that is Make-A-Wish. It is one of life's cruel truths that every 20 minutes, a family gets devastating news that their child has been diagnosed with a critical illness. Having 2 kids of my own, that idea is truly unimaginable. But Make-A-Wish brings children and their families hope during what I imagine would feel like a hopeless time, where the anticipation of a wish will empower them to believe in better days ahead. Donations help the nonprofit grant wishes to children who are battling a critical illness and waiting for their wish. Things like having a companion puppy, to a bedroom makeover, publishing a book, singing on stage, or memorable once-in-a-lifetime experiences. Any amount helps, and there is a donation button below this video, so if you're able, join us in helping make these wishes come true for little ones who definitely don't deserve what life has thrown at them.
Thank you, Make-A-Wish!
But jumping into the effect, since we have an Adobe account, we're going to go to mixamo.com to get a free animated model. For a scene like this, we're going to go for a medieval character like this guy here. You could opt to use multiple different characters, but since our shot is so wide, we could probably get away with duplicates of just one, and we love getting away with things.
So good. It's so good.
For animation, we'll type in run and look through the options. We decided to go for this slow run so that the pace doesn't look too fast for our length of shot. The actual directional speed we'll control later, so we're going to check to keep this in place and download as an FBX at 24 frames per second. You could download multiple different animations for variety, but once again, our shot is so wide that we can probably get away with it, and we love getting away with things.
It's so good.
For this scene, we're going to be using Element 3D, but to first convert the FBX file, we're going to jump into Blender and import that file. The shield is clipping with his arm in this animation, so we're going to select the shield, and we're going to rotate that and move it slightly until the clipping is no longer visible. Now we're going to change the timeline to end at the final animation frame and export as an OBJ, naming and checking animation export to get each frame as separate OBJ files. In the UV editing tab, we're going to choose each texture map and save the images to use in Element. Jumping over to After Effects, we're going to create a new 4K comp with a few seconds runtime, create a solid layer to use for our 3D scene. Then we're going to apply Video Copilot's Element 3D, and in scene setup, we're going to choose File, Import, 3D Sequence, and select the first OBJ file. If it's too small to see, check Normalize Size and change the alignment to bottom so that their feet are on the grid. Clicking on the model material, we will import the different texture maps that we saved from Blender for the correlating maps and lower the saturation of the diffuse. Duplicate the group and change it to Group 2, and we're going to change the environment map to something which closer matches the style we want for the shot, then close Element. Now create a new camera and null layer, make it 3D, and link the camera to it. Hide the null's visibility and change rotation to place the camera into a bird's eye view, and rotate to have the soldier facing screen right. To turn this solo soldier into an army, first go into Group 2 dropdown and hide that soldier for the time being. In the Group 1 dropdown, Particle Replicator, change the shape to plane and increase the particle count. We went with almost 3,000 soldiers. Scale up the shape to spread them out, and in the particle look, lower the particle size to shrink them all down. And for variety, boost the particle size random. In the Particle Replicator effect scatter dropdown, we'll boost the X, Y, and Z scatter to spread the soldiers around a bit. And under Particle Look, rotation will boost the rotation random as well as the individual X, Y, Z random to further vary the people. However, the animation still has them running in sync, so in Baked Animation, change the mode to Random Loop. Because they're running in place at the start frame, change the Particle Replicator position Z to move them over screen left. Then keyframe this and the Z scatter. Moving to the last frame, we're going to change both these values to have the army getting closer to the center of frame, and the Z scatter randomizes the soldier's speed and distance. But before we move on, let's pause here to thank our sponsor.
Delightful. Delightful strain of tea tobacco. Very nice. Lovely. Oh, hello there, friends. Do you ever feel better than everyone else? No? Well, you mustn't be using MusicBed, mustn't you? Not be. Because for me, I always feel better than everyone else, and that's because I use MusicBed. They're the only brand I trust when it comes to storytelling. It really is astonishing how much better I am than you, unless you two use MusicBed. And in that case, we are equals, aren't we? If you do not use a music bed, I will now inform you why you are lesser than myself. First, they have a plethora amount of music to help push whatever emotion my story needs. Example, absolute excellence. They also have the most grand roster of independent artists with over 40,000 songs that you will not find anywhere else. They're also the most curated because MusicBed handpicks every artist in its exclusive roster, which are all curated for your film, TV, and advertising projects. Did you hear that? They demand excellence, as I do, because I'm better than you. So take your films and TV projects to the highest of heights with MusicBed, and you can hear the difference for yourself by signing up for a free account. And then when you become enlightened and fall in love with it, you can use the coupon code FILMRIDE at checkout to receive a month free when you purchase an annual subscription. And then finally, we will be equals. Imagine it. Lovely.
Hey. To add the opposing army, we're going to go to the group utilities and copy the group. Back in group 2, we're going to re-enable that soldier and paste the group 1 properties. First, we'll change the Z position on the start frame and move it over to the right of the screen. Then under rotation, we're going to change the Y to 180 degrees, turning the soldiers around to face the left army. We'll also change the Z scatter and again, keyframe both this and the Z position, move to the last frame and change these to have the army traveling screen left. Change the random seed to add variety or find a pattern that you like. We'll also change the random seed in the particle look section as well as alter the particle size random. For the ground, we're going to go back into our element scene and create a new group. Set to number 3, create a plane and use a texture of your choice. We have the Pro Shaders 2 pack, so we're going to use this Stonewall 3 material. In the diffuse map, we're going to alter the contrast, brightness, and saturation to make it feel a bit flatter, then change the normal bump for added detail when we use lights. To scale down and move the material, you can change these UV repeat and offset values. But now exit element and in group 3 particle look dropdown, increase the size to fill the frame. Now, while these days it's much more common to have night scenes feel somewhat underexposed and flat, we thought we'd lean closer to the Lord of the Rings night looks with a bright, hard light for the moon and a very cold blue tint to the grade. For the key, we're going to create a new spotlight, boost the intensity, and check cast shadows. Inside the element render settings, we'll also enable shadows and increase the map size and samples. We'll position the light over to the top left of the frame and angle down. And if we move the camera, you can see the placement better. We're going to use duplicates of that light with altered intensities and cast shadows switched off and placed in different areas of the scene. To add some extra darkness around the soldiers, we're going to enable the element ambient occlusion, lowering the radius and intensity. Using a curves effect, we're going to add contrast and boost the brightness as well as lower the red channel and increase the blue slightly. To pop the highlights, we can use a camera lens blur effect, set the blur radius to 0, increase the highlight gain and lower the threshold. To continue pushing that Lord of the Rings look, we can add in some torches, which we did not do the correct way because it's a wide shot and we like getting away with things.
So good.
So we're going to duplicate the solid layer for our torches, uncheck the shadows in the element render settings, and disable the group 3 ground layer. In group 1, we're going to decrease the particle count as we don't want every individual soldier to be carrying a torch. Then in particle look, lower the size, do the same for group 2 until you have this when soloed. Now we're going to reset the curves effect and this time really boost the brightness and crush the shadows. Using a vector blur with the boosted amount and a duplicate, changing the type to perpendicular. Now we're going to use Red Giant's optical glow with a lowered amount and boosted size. Next, we're going to use Video Copilot's color vibrance, choosing a warm color and lowering the vibrance. Then set the layer blending mode to add. On a new adjustment layer above, we're going to add even more glow with lowered amounts and highlights only, increase spread, vibrance, and a yellow color to pick up on the torches. And to keep it faint, we're going to lower the layer opacity. To add some clouds and shadows like you see in some of these wide landscape shots, we're going to create a new solid, make it 3D, rotate to face the camera, and scale up. In the material options, switch off to accepting lights and shadows, and using a fractal noise effect, we're going to change brightness and contrast, increasing the scale and keyframing both the transform and evolution to have them change over time. Now add a fast box blur to soften, and then with another adjustment layer, choose the solid to use as a Luma inverted map. And And with the curves effect, we'll lower brightness to be our cloud shadows. Often, battle scenes have smoke placed throughout the shot, so we're going to be using some of the assets from our smoke pack. Anyone with our Infinity pack will have these included too. So we'll double click on one and scrub through, then set a start frame. Then we're going to drop it into the comp, make it a 3D layer, disable light and shadows, and change rotation, position, and scale. Now we're going to use the unmolt preset to key out the black and a tint effect to make it mid-gray color. Using a light sweep effect, we can add some pop to the edges from the same direction as our key light, and we'll change the speed to make it much slower and enable frame blending. We then did the same thing for multiple different smoke assets placed throughout the shot, sometimes making the tint warmer as if illuminated by torches. Others made more dark as if the smoke was from fire, giving us this. To complete the look, we animated the camera to move over time to the right, tracking our left army, a bit of a shake to give that Stampede vibe, and lastly, a color grade. And obviously, you can make a few adjustments and have more dynamic camera movements, which can be fun to try out. And for the surrounding shots, we just used stock footage and graded it to match our Battlefield shot. But that's it, our God's Eye view of a battle ready to commence. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And when you do, make sure to hit the bell button so you're notified when we put up new content. But until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.